flying from Amsterdam. It's a 12-hour flight to South America and our destination of Quito in Ecuador. We're travelling with Celebrity Cruises and we'll stay here at the Marriott Hotel for 2 nights before flying out to the Galapagos Islands. Quito, Ecuador's capital, sits high in the Andean foothills at an altitude of 9,350 feet. Up here, the air is a bit thin, so you need to walk slowly and breathe deeply. So after a local McDonald's, we went to bed early, having travelled all day. Next day with breakfast, we had 2 paracetamol tablets to guard against altitude sickness. But we were excited to explore Quito. Inside the hotel were our guides. Each coach would have 2 plus 2 security men. Our first stop is at the Monument to the Virgin Mary, located on top of El Panecillo Hill and visible from most of Quito. The 45-metre tall statue, made of aluminium, was built in 1976. She stands on a globe with a snake around her feet. Just in front of our coaches, there was some sort of police training going on. There's security everywhere in Quito. 2.8 million people live here. The city is 25 miles long and 3 miles wide. And below us, this is the old town, with the Basilica of San Francisco, where we'll be going later. I noticed lots of people selling by the roadside as we drove towards the old town. This is the Central Bank of Ecuador, where they're taking no chances with the money. But we're walking towards La Campana, with a facade of volcanic stone. But the door gives a clue to the treasures within. For this is known as the Golden Church, dating back to the 17th century. It's certainly the most beautiful church that I've ever been in. Wow, that was stunning. Then our guide took us to San Francisco Square to visit the Order of San Agustin Monastery. It was built between 1535 and 1650, and the building contains facilities for healthcare, communication, and education. We even had lunch amongst the cloisters. But most important is the Roman Catholic Church. The last stop in the city was Independence Square, where the presidential palace is at the moment without a president because of forthcoming elections. Finally, we drove out to the Intiñan Museum, which celebrates the fact that Quito is in the middle of the world. Here you could learn how cocoa beans are turned into chocolate, or how our ancestors made shrunken heads. But the main attraction were the experiments based on being at a latitude of 0 degrees.
So please, where you are, I will give you a time limit in order to complete a round like this. Got it? Go ahead.
Try walking along the line of latitude with your eyes closed, and the pull of the earth won't let you do it, supposedly. There was no sun, So this experiment didn't work, and goodness knows what Helen was about to do. In the words of William Shakespeare, it was all much ado about nothing.
Oh, look at that!
Can you see?
Yeah.
It's clockwise, right?
Despite a poor end, our first day in South America was excellent. Next day, having said goodbye to the suitcases the previous night, we managed to squeeze the essentials into our rucksacks, and it was a 45-minute drive to the airport. The airport opened in 2013, replacing the old and dangerous city airport. Our flight is at 11:04 to Galapagos. It will take 1 hour 40 minutes to fly across the Pacific Ocean to Seymour Airport on Baltra Island. We're on an Avianca Airbus A320, specially chartered by Celebrity Cruises. And surprisingly, because it's an internal flight, you can take liquids through security. Looking down at the mountain roads in the Andes, it's certainly a challenge for drivers. Just before landing, the staff spray the cabin so as not to introduce any foreign material into the islands. On the final approach, we can see the small cruise ships waiting for us. And as we landed, I thought it all looked very dry and barren. My goodness, it was hot, like being in a Turkish bath. With lots of people arriving, it took some 3/4 of an hour to have the passports checked and present the visa card and health form. Then we got on a bus without air conditioning, which would take us to the landing stage. There we were presented with a life jacket and had time to look at the local wildlife whilst waiting for the Zodiac boat to take us to our ship. Celebrity Expedition, on the right, will be our home for the next week. So we were helped into the Zodiacs to sail out to the ship, something that will become a well-practiced daily event.
There's only one that has 5 floors, and we're on 5 floors.
And there she is, Celebrity Expedition, holding just 48 passengers. One of the naturalists told us to keep seated so that our hand luggage could be unloaded first. Then we were welcomed aboard, handing in our life jackets and stepping into the mandatory disinfectant tray. Now, rather extravagantly, perhaps on the back of the COVID pandemic, we booked the penthouse suite. It comes complete with 2 bathrooms, a small side balcony, and a larger balcony with 2 sunbeds, a jacuzzi, and a view over the bow of the ship. After checking out the muster station and then lunch, we dropped anchor near North Seymour Island, where we'd opted to go on the half-mile walk rather than take the Zodiac ride. It took just 8 minutes to go ashore, armed with our walking poles. Now, there are strict rules when visiting the Galapagos Islands. You can't go ashore without an escort, and you must stick to the paths. You mustn't feed or touch the animals, and keep a 2-meter distance away. But that would prove a bit difficult on this first walk, for there were sea lions absolutely everywhere. I must say the path proved quite a challenge. We really needed those walking poles. Then we spotted the most iconic of all the Galapagos Islands creatures, the blue-footed booby. There were 20,000 birds in 2012, now it's about 6,000 due to lack of fish. They have brown wings, dark beaks, a white chest and mottled white and brown head and neck. But it's the remarkable blue feet which make them so attractive. He tries to persuade his mate that his are the bluest feet around. Then I spotted some great frigate birds. The male has a vibrant red throat pouch, which turns that way during the mating season. And so we made our careful way back to the Zodiac. Other small boats are around, but due to conservation, vessels are not allowed to carry more than 100 guests. When we get back to our ship, to limit the risk of disease, we will have to hose down our shoes and walk through the disinfectant tray again. After the excursion briefing for tomorrow and dinner, we were able to unpack properly at last. It's been a hectic but fascinating first day aboard. Overnight, we're sailing to South Plaza Island. Then from mid-morning to mid-afternoon, onwards to Santa Fe Island. I can hear the anchor going down, so that must be South Plaza Island. And here we are at 8 o'clock in the morning, escorted by our naturalist, going ashore. Our first sighting was of a swallow-tail gull. It's the only fully nocturnal gull in the world, using its large eyes at night to catch squid and small fish. It spends most of its days flying and hunting over the ocean. It's obviously a great attraction to see the animals in their natural environment, but this is not a tropical paradise. In fact, one can hardly imagine a more forlorn place on Earth. Charles Darwin called it the Gardens of Hell. But you're not going to see scenes like this on the beaches in Spain. Here you've got both marine iguanas and also the land-based type. Land iguanas are cold-blooded and therefore seek the sun. They have evolved tough skins to resist the powerful equatorial rays. They survive with very little food, enjoying cactus fruits, and can live until about 55 years old. Well, a picnic out here wouldn't be a good idea, so it's time to go back to the ship. When the last Zodiac was safely stowed, we sailed towards Santa Fe Island. The jacuzzi on the main deck looks very inviting, but we in the penthouse suite have our own. Before long, it was time for lunch. The tiger prawns were amazing. Near Santa Fe Island, as they launched the Zodiacs, we could see a lagoon. And sure enough, later on, some of our party went snorkeling. On the beach, it was what they call a wet landing. The locals weren't bothered at all by our arrival. It was to be a difficult walk over rocks as we went in search of a particular iguana only found here on Santa Fe. Well, there's a Galapagos dove. We searched for a good half hour, but eventually we found one, a Santa Fe land iguana. About a metre long, they are paler in colour than the Galapagos land iguanas, with a longer and more tapered snout and more pronounced dorsal spines. Very prehistoric looking, I think. Mission accomplished, we made our way back to the Zodiac and saw the young sea lions playing on the rocks. Another day in a very strange and fascinating part of the world. Overnight we would sail to anchor off San Cristobal Island and then take the tender to Puerto Moreno. We would then take a bus up into the highlands. It was quite rough in the night, but the weather looks good today. We hadn't realised that the ship would be in motion all the time, both day and night, because we never put into a port, always sailing or at anchor. Arriving on San Cristobal Island, we took the bus for the 40-minute drive up into the highlands to what I thought would be a zoo, the David Rodriguez Giant Tortoise Breeding Centre. As the inhabitants came out to welcome us, I quickly realised it certainly wasn't a zoo. No cages or fences here. We were asked to keep to the paths and away from the animals, but that was almost impossible, as they didn't know the paths were for the visitors. There are about 58 giant tortoises here, the largest being 2 feet tall. Giant tortoise is the animal after which the archipelago was named. Galapagos in Spanish, meaning tortoise, hence the Galapagos Islands. Calling them the Tortoise Islands just wouldn't be the same. By the 19th century, whalers and merchantmen were calling regularly at the islands. Giant tortoises can survive without food or water for very long periods, and so the ships came here to collect them. They put them in the hold so that after many weeks at sea they could get one out and butcher it for a meal of fresh meat. The purpose of this centre is to increase their population. They are bred in similar conditions to their natural environment. Eventually, they'll be taken back to their habitat, where they'll be able to survive on their own. Finally, we went to see the nursery, where the smallest tortoises, to prevent them being eaten by cats or rats, are protected by wire netting. It's a wonderful thing that these unique and peaceful creatures will once again be able to roam free. Back in Puerto Moreno, we walked from the bus to the jetty. They do tours to kick a rock from here, but we'll be seeing that later. As we waited for the Zodiac to take us back for lunch, I noticed a baby sea lion suckling on its mother. It's been such a wonderful morning. I'm looking forward to those giant prawns, French fries, and a lovely cold beer. And Angie went for a very relaxing soak in the jacuzzi. After lunch, it was back to Puerto Moreno's jetty, where the locals were putting on a show.
Sonrisa y vida.
Then we went by bus from the next street. All the flowers on these islands are either yellow or white. We were going to the Interpretation Centre to find out about the Galapagos Islands in detail, but we already knew most of what they had to tell us, and it was so hot in there that we came out. Near the beach, we spotted a lovely yellow warbler. The animals of the Galapagos are amazingly tame, and that's because they don't have any natural predators. In fact, they are unconcerned by the presence of visitors. In the distance, there's a rock sticking up, and we're going to sail round it. It's called Kicker Rock because of its boot-like shape, but it was originally the site of a volcanic eruption. It used to be a cone, but tens of thousands of years of wind and waves have made it into the structure we see today. Frigate birds like to fly near ships on the high seas, hence the name. They are fashioned by nature to make optimum use of the air currents, flying effortlessly. Overnight, we sailed to north of Floriana Island to visit Post Office Bay. Later, we would move to Punta Cormorant. Early morning near Floriana Island, and there's our sister ship, Celebrity Flora. We could see the 2 balconies on our suite as we sped away from the ship. There's no jetty at Post Office Bay, so it will be a wet landing on the beach. After we'd landed, I thought I could see tyre tracks in the sand, but no. These are sea turtle tracks, and up in the bushes and in the sand behind me, they lay their eggs. But the big problem is that cats and rats eat the eggs. So to combat that, there are little pellets of poison, which are actually dropped by helicopter. Rats came to the island aboard pirate and whaling ships. Here at Post Office Bay, this postbox was started by whalers hundreds of years ago. Our guide said you look for a postcard addressed to near where you live, take it home and deliver it free of charge.
Right, let's see what we've got here.
We did exactly that for Caroline in West Kirby, and this is the photo of her friend posting it. Small world. Then you posted your own, of course. After that, some people went swimming or snorkeling in the beautiful clear waters, whilst I had a wander round the rocks. There's a whimbrel. It's back to the ship for lunch, and then we sailed a short distance to Punta Cormorant, where we walked to a lagoon to see the flamingos. I think it must be the mating season. Then we walked to another beach, but you're not allowed to swim, it's protected. And we could just see a sea turtle. It was a big one too. It almost looked like a rock. Once again, it's back to our floating hotel. Overnight, we're sailing to see a mangrove area on Isabella Island. And in the late morning, we will move to Punta Moreno. The evening's onboard briefing would show the detail of the journey up into the mangrove area and out again. It's been another interesting day, with the best sunset yet. Next morning it was quite a long way to the mangrove area. The water's too shallow for our ship to get nearer. I've slowed the next shot down so you can see the explosion of tiny fish jumping out of the water. Quite remarkable. Do you know, I'm sure that's a sea lion asleep on an old tree trunk. Yes, sure enough. In fact, there's two of them. After a while, we left the mangrove area and came across a feeding frenzy of pelicans. They are superb fishers and can hit the water at up to 60 miles an hour, often flying in formation to target their prey. After all that excitement and later sailing to Punta Moreno, we were out in the Zodiacs again to find animals that live on the volcanic rocks. The marine iguanas have taken on a soot black colour to blend in with the island's volcanic rocks and absorb more of the sun's heat. The flightless cormorant is distinguished by wings that have decreased in size. It's lost its ability to fly as there is a steady food source in the ocean and it has no natural predators. Found only in the Galapagos, this is one of the rarest birds in the world. The Galapagos penguin's peculiar hopping-like walk belies its swift underwater presence. As we went back to the ship, I thought how lovely it was to see different animals living in harmony. So back on board, we attended tomorrow's briefing, then dinner and an early night. Overnight it was really quite rough, with the ship rocking and rolling as we sailed to Porto Ayora on Santa Cruz Island. Then at lunchtime we would drive up into the highlands to El Manzanillo Ranch. In the morning, a luxurious Silver Sea ship was anchored in the bay of Puerto Ayora, and our ship was having its supplies replenished from a small barge pulled up alongside. It's a really tricky manoeuvre as the man unloading the boat has to time his handling with the swell of the sea. He's obviously very experienced at this because we watched him for quite a while and nothing landed in the water. Wearing our life jackets as always, we were helped into a Zodiac to go ashore. Then we'd take a short bus ride to the Charles Darwin Research Centre. Darwin, an English naturalist, arrived on HMS Beagle in 1835. Here he began to understand that animals can adapt to their environment in order to survive. This resulted in his book, Origin of the Species, considered to be the foundation of evolutionary biology. One of the displays described the tortoise breeding program. Lonesome George, commemorated in the town, is a sad reminder of the past. His breed is now extinct. On the way back, don't forget to look at the market, said our guide. So we did, but it certainly wasn't what I was expecting.
Man, they look well fed, eh?
Suddenly, an evil-looking heron appeared. It single-handedly chased away all the pelicans. Fascinating. I had to tear myself away because we were going up into the highlands to have lunch and to see traditional dancing and tortoises in the wild. Now, it's not often that you see a sign like that. And sure enough, in the road were wild tortoises. After lunch, local students entertained us. We were asked to wear these tall rubber boots in order to explore the ranch. There are over 2,000 giant tortoises on Santa Cruz Island. This enormous creature is about 120 years old. It's just wonderful to be able to see these beautiful creatures in the wild. These tortoises are herbivorous, feeding on vegetation including grasses, cactus, leaves, and native fruit. The bus took us back to Puerto Ayala's pier, and I noticed all the boats in the bay. The Galapagos gets about 280,000 tourists a year. Back on the ship, we cooled down at the bar with a lovely cold drink. Overnight, for our last full day, we're sailing to Hispaniola Island, to the north coast for those who want to kayak in the morning, and then round to the west for those who want a zodiac cruise. From our anchored position, it was quite interesting to see others going out onto their zodiacs. We'd opted for the afternoon zodiac cruise. We were not able to land because of avian flu, but unfortunately the sea was so rough that we couldn't get near enough to the land to see any wildlife. However, we could see how the Galapagos archipelago rose up from the sea as a result of repeated volcanic eruptions. The islands are not attractive, but they are a haven for wildlife, a land where birds have flown here and reptiles have floated here. Overnight, we're sailing back to where our journey began, Baltra Island. The diesel refueling vessel arrived and tied up alongside. Notice the yellow boom in the sea to contain any spillage, which can then be sucked up or neutralized. During our week at sea, we've travelled some 740 miles, completing the southern loop of the Galapagos Islands. We've been privileged to visit a destination that few have experienced, a privileged insight into an untouched world.